What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top must-own running back handcuffs for the 2021 fantasy football season. These are the current backups to star running backs that if something happens to them, injury or otherwise, their backups, these handcuffs, will be league winners. So make sure to tune in. And if you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Everything you could want at a great price. Top 150 overall player rankings in standard and PPR formats, individual player bios, projections, tiers, along with general fantasy advice. Again, all those details in the description. But with that being said, let's get right into it. Coming in at number one in our most valued handcuff for this season, we've got Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys, who per Fantasy Pros average draft position list here across several different platforms is the number 42 overall ranked running back. So a lot of these running backs here today on our list will be in this range, in the mid 40s to the early 50s, because obviously they are currently backups. And on a week-to-week basis, unless it's a blowout, unless it's just one fluke big play, they're not going to be relevant. But the thing is, obviously if there's an injury, these guys are league winners. And I think Tony Pollard more so than anyone else on this list, because if Zeke goes down, Tony Pollard is a top 5 running back. We saw it last season when Zeke wasn't playing. Pollard was an RB1, no questions asked. And that was without Dak Prescott. Having Dak Prescott back on this offense will help everybody, including the wide receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, bottom line. Now, yes, this offensive line isn't as good as it was maybe 2 years ago, but it's still a relatively good offensive line. You saw it last season. They were still dealing with some issues, but Pollard was able to have some success, so I'm not worried about this at all. And the great thing about Pollard is the Cowboys have shown us they will let him do everything that Ezekiel Elliott is trusted to do. Rush the football in important situations, catch the football out of the backfield, get those tough yards, just punch it in out of the red zone. I think, honestly, Tony Pollard, more so than any other running back on this list, in a couple of years, he could be a starting running back all by himself and handle the workload for some team. Right now, the Cowboys are just really lucky that they have this type of caliber as their backup. If Ezekiel Elliott wasn't on the Dallas Cowboys, Tony Pollard would be talked about as a top 5 running back, in my opinion. That's why, to me, he kind of gets the nod above all these other guys. And if something does happen to Ezekiel Elliott, which, maybe is far-fetched compared to some of these other starting running backs, since he's got a pretty, he's pretty healthy, all things considered. But if it does, I love Tony Pollard. If you have Ezekiel Elliott, please, please, please draft Tony Pollard as a handcuff. He's probably going to be going in the 10th to 11th round. Somebody that's a Ezekiel Elliott owner, I would probably potentially reach around earlier for him, especially if you've constructed already, the majority of your roster and you feel pretty good about it and there's no, glaring needs. So for that reason, Tony Pollard, if you're the Zeke owner, he is must own. And honestly, if you're just kind of taking a shot on some running back handcuff, even though you don't have the starter, Tony Pollard would be the guy that we point you toward his direction, that he has the highest upside. So if you just want to go by that approach, he'd be the guy that we target out of this group. Next up, we've got Latavius Murray of the New Orleans Saints. And obviously, he is behind Alvin Kamara, who finished as the number 1 overall fantasy scoring running back last season. Right now, Latavius Murray ranked as the 48th running back, again, per Fantasy Pros average rankings across different platforms. He's probably going to be drafted around the 13th, 14th, maybe a little bit later round. But the thing that's interesting with Latavius Murray, unlike Tony Pollard, is that the Saints usually, they do allow their backup, their RB2, to get some decent playing time. That was the case with Mark Ingram. That was the case. That's been the case with Latavius Murray. He gets his fair share of opportunities, and for that reason, he's probably on a week-to-week basis going to put up some more points than a lot of these other running backs. In fact, when it comes to Latavius Murray, last season, he finished as the number 32 overall running back in standard, 34th overall in PPR. The guy had 656 rushing yards. He had 176 receiving yards, and we've seen it before when Alvin Kamara isn't playing. Not necessarily last season, but the year before, Latavius Murray was, again, a league winner when Kamara was out for, about, I believe, a 2-3 week stretch. So Latavius Murray is somebody that's very, very valuable. Now, yes, the New Orleans Saints without Drew Brees, not quite, you could argue as a for sure thing at the running back position, especially if it's Taysom Hill. I am a little bit worried about that if he is the starting quarterback, that he's going to take away opportunities from Alvin Kamara, from Latavius Murray, whoever it might be. But, at the end of the day, the thing about Latavius Murray, I think he's more of a prototypical type of running back, doesn't necessarily rely as much on the pass catching as some other type of running backs, but he can also do that really well. That's the great thing about him, and that's why I have him as our number 2 running back. If Jameis Winston is the quarterback there and something happens to Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray a little bit more valuable because, again, I do believe that Jameis Winston will just equal more pure rushing opportunities for Latavius Murray. He's not going to tuck it and run as much as a Taysom Hill, but that's the great thing. Again, Latavius Murray, compared to all of these running backs that we're going to mention, is going to be probably at the end of the year, if there's no injuries, and none of these handcuffs end up being, I guess, useful, he's probably going to be the highest ranked running back at the end of the year. He's going to have the highest total of fantasy points because just the way that the Saints are built, regardless if Drew Brees is there or not, this offense with Sean Payton, it doesn't 100% commit to their star running back. They try and keep Alvin Kamara fresh, so Latavius Murray will have decent opportunities, and that's why I really like him. Again, if you're an Alvin Kamara owner, definitely pay up maybe a little bit earlier for Latavius Murray. Continuing on, we have got A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers, and Dillon's an interesting guy because, right now he's ranked as the number 39th overall running back per these Fantasy Pros rankings. And I do think that's a little bit high, but maybe it has a little bit to do with the fact that people were ready to crown A.J. Dillon if, Aaron Jones left this free agency, but kind of shocking. He decides to remain with the Packers. They paid him a good amount of money. But let's not forget, Jamaal Williams no longer with the Green Bay Packers, so A.J. Dillon now slots into that Jamaal Williams role, and I do think he's a guy that can kind of run the rock, handle more carries than Jamaal Williams, who is maybe suited for a more so pass-catching role. And on top of this, again, A.J. Dillon was drafted last season in the second round of the NFL draft when the Packers still had Jamaal Williams and Aaron Jones, so they obviously saw something that they liked in him, and a lot of, analysts out there, they were ready to call A.J. Dillon, a borderline RB1 if Aaron Jones left Green Bay. So the talent is there. A.J. Dillon, at some point in time, might not be this season, might not be next season, but he will become the featured running back for the Green Bay Packers. Now, obviously with Aaron Jones there, I don't think that A.J. Dillon, is going to get all that many opportunities. I think he probably finishes again, probably in that 40 to 50 range. He'll be given some chances to spell Aaron Jones, but probably similar to a Latavius Murray type of situation. Right now, the Green Bay Packers, the guys they trust the most is Devontae Adams and then Aaron Jones. I don't know how much they'll utilize A.J. Dillon. Maybe there's some pressure because they used an early round draft pick for him. But as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, he's going to target his guys. He's going to make sure that they are in crunch time situations. And Aaron Jones is definitely more that than A.J. Dillon, who didn't get all that many opportunities last season. So it's kind of tough to gauge something from him from 2020 since he was pretty much the third string running back. He got some opportunities later on, but the big point here is that now with no Jamaal Williams, he is the next guy up. And when it was Jamaal Williams as the number 2 running back, he was in this exact same category as a valuable handcuff to Aaron Jones. So A.J. Dillon probably again in the 10th, 11th round, probably in the 10th round if you're an Aaron Jones owner. He might have, a decent outing here and there, but again, it's going to take an Aaron Jones injury for A.J. Dillon to be valuable, for him to be relevant. So, standalone, probably not as high on A.J. Dillon as some other individuals. Again, that's why he is in this handcuff category. It will take an injury to Aaron Jones for Dillon to be in that RB1 conversation. Next up, we've got Alexander Mattison of the Minnesota Vikings. And Mattison probably goes hand in hand to some extent with Tony Pollard. For the last couple of years, we've thought about them in a similar fashion because both guys are backups to top 5 running backs in Zeke and Dalvin Cook. But Alexander Mattison, Dalvin Cook is usually, after Christian McCaffrey, the number 2 running back selected in all formats. So you could argue he is a little bit more valuable. But my counter to that would be that I think Tony Pollard is probably on a little bit of a higher level in terms of solo play. I think, again, I'm not necessarily sure with Alexander Mattison that he could be the unquestioned starting running back for a team right now. I think he, to some extent, benefits from the fact that the Minnesota Vikings are a run-first team and that Kirk Cousins isn't the type of quarterback that can put the team on his shoulders. So they're just going to rely on the running back position a lot. But hey, even though we've seen Alexander Mattison, struggle a little bit last season, in the same breath, we've also seen him succeed when Dalvin Cook has been out. So keep that in mind. And also, on top of that, Dalvin Cook has been a little bit more injury riddled than Ezekiel Elliott, even though, it might be just a game or two these last 2 years. Obviously, before that, he's had longer-term injuries, but he's kind of nicked that in the butt since then, the quote-unquote injury label for him. But either way, Alexander Mattison still remains a very viable handcuff. And while he might not have the same ceiling as these other names that we've mentioned so far, I think you still have to, if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, have Alexander Mattison in your back pocket. In Fantasy Pros, he is the number 47th overall ranked running back. So you're probably going to get him around the 13th round, somewhere there. Again, if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, probably in the 12th, 13th round is the spot where you should be drafting him because if something happens to Dalvin Cook and you lose that, Alexander Mattison, he won't be a top 5 running back in my opinion, but he will probably be a low-end RB1, which still is extremely valuable. Continuing on, we've got Gus Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens. And Gus Edwards probably right now is the most one-dimensional running back that we've talked about, but he also finished as the number 28th overall running back last season in standard formats, obviously lower in PPR, 37th overall. So again, that highlights him being more one-dimensional, a standard-suited running back. The guy only caught 9 passes last season, so doesn't excel in that category, but neither does J.K. Dobbins, who is ahead of him on the depth chart. The thing about Gus Edwards is that he gets a lot of usage because the Baltimore Ravens are a run-first team. They also did just pay Gus Edwards. Obviously, Mark Ingram no longer there, which will help Gus Edwards. He's going to get, similar to a Latavius Murray, some standalone decent performances 2021. Obviously, they're going to be the furthest thing from consistent, but they will be more, I would say, common than for an Alexander Mattison, for a Tony Pollard, for an A.J. Dillon. Now, with J.K. Dobbins, I think him and Gus Edwards are both limited upside-wise by the fact that Lamar Jackson is there and that he's naturally going to take away rushing opportunities from whoever the starting running back is. So again, because of that, you could say that Gus Edwards doesn't have as high of a ceiling as these other individuals. But if you're a J.K. Dobbins owner, I would definitely be targeting Gus Edwards. Right now, ranked the number 43rd overall running back per Fantasy Pros. So similar to that Tony Pollard range, probably going to be drafting him around the 10th, 11th, 12th round. And while he is more one-dimensional, I would put a bigger emphasis on him in standard scoring formats. In PPR, I'm less likely to take a chance on him because In that situation, to me, J.K. Dobbins isn't really an RB1 himself. So the handcuff then becomes a little bit less valuable. But either way, if something does happen to J.K. Dobbins, the Ravens wanting to be a run-first team, maybe it won't be as to a high of an extent this season because of the wide receivers they've added. But still, Gus Edwards will be someone that's extremely, extremely valuable. Concluding with the final name on this list, we've got Jamaal Williams of the Detroit Lions. And we kind of alluded to it before. But when Williams was with the Green Bay Packers, he was often a popular handcuff for us if you were an Aaron Jones owner. Now it's just a different team. It's if you're a DeAndre Swift owner, then Jamaal Williams is probably somebody that you want to have on your team in the later rounds. Ranked as the number 44 overall running back in these, average draft positions across all these formats, Jamaal Williams, it's kind of intriguing because he's been at the center of a lot of offseason talk from Anthony Lynn. Whether it's smoke or whether there's some truth to it, they've gone on record, that is, the Detroit Lions staff, and said that, we're going to ride a hot hand approach, which could mean that Jamaal Williams, out of all of these running backs that we've mentioned, if these rumors are true, it's a big if, could have the most standalone value right now and could be the most undervalued running back on this list as well. He's someone that I just like to take a chance on as a flyer, even if I don't have DeAndre Swift because, of what we've heard from the coaches, that he's going to get opportunities, that it could be a hot hand approach. Yes, he is more of a pass-catching running back, so kind of opposite to J.K. Dobbins. In standard formats, probably won't be ranked as high, but we've still seen him fill in for Aaron Jones admirably when he was unavailable or when he was struggling, so I'm not all that worried about it. I think the Detroit Lions can figure out a way to utilize Jamaal Williams if Swift isn't available. He's going to be used as a pass catcher regardless, so I do think he has some decent value in PPR. And for what it's worth, the Detroit Lions did a pretty good job of upgrading that offensive line. They're going to have to throw the football a bunch. That defense is probably still going to struggle. And I think the top pass catchers for this team are probably going to be guys like TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and then Jamaal Williams. So if something happens to DeAndre Swift, Jamaal Williams goes up even more so on that pecking order. For that reason, I'm really intrigued for him as a prospect and really just to see what is actually going to happen. Is everything that we've heard about this running back room true? Or is it really going to be DeAndre Swift? But either way, I think you still have to take a chance on Jamaal Williams if you're a DeAndre Swift owner. He's right around that range that we've talked about, 10th, 11th, 12th round of these other handcuffs. And if you believe in DeAndre Swift, then again, Jamaal Williams is pretty much a must-add because he's the direct backup to him. So to me, Jamaal Williams is somebody that in PPR formats especially, I'm willing to take a chance on. So with that, we wrap up this breakdown of our top must-own handcuffs for the 2021 fantasy football season. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree? Would you add anybody else to this list along with any other questions you guys might have? And if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. And lastly, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. And while you're there, get yourself a copy of the 2021 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.